And now all we have to do is just return this type from this method, and you will see that our query handler becomes very simple because we are delegating most of the responsibility to the repository. I'm also going to remove the event statistics response class. The next thing we need to fix is all of the projections under the projections folder. And let's start with the event created domain event handler. We were using it to insert a new record into the event statistics table. So let's update this to use the event statistics repository. So I'm going to inject the event statistics repository. Let's get rid of the database connection and the SQL statement. And inside of the handle method, I'm going to say await event statistics repository insert async. And then we need to create a new instance of the event statistics class. And we can obtain one from the static factory create method. So let's go ahead and pass in the required arguments. And I'm going to get rid of anything that is unnecessary. And this is what we are left with in the handler for the event created domain event. We can also pass in a cancellation token to the insert async method, and our handler becomes very simple. This is just going to insert the event statistics class as a document inside of the respective collection in MongoDB. The next few projections are going to be a bit more challenging, but we should be able to make it work. Here, we were updating the event statistics materialize view by running some select queries inside of the database as part of the overall select statement. So what we need to do is to still continue using these select queries because they contain the information that we need, but then we will be writing this information directly into MongoDB. So I'm going to update this to just leave the select query. I need to pass in an event ID argument, and below I can execute a scalar query to get back the integer value returned by count. This is going to represent the attendee count, and I can set this value on the event statistics type. So let's go ahead and inject the event statistics repository, and then we can use it to get the event statistics instance from MongoDB by calling the repository. So I will say await event statistics repository get async, and I can pass in the event ID and the cancellation token. This should give me back my event statistics instance, and then I can say event statistics attendees checked in, and I can set it to the attendee count value. And then I need to update this value inside of MongoDB by calling replace async, passing in the same event statistics object, only this time it's going to be updated, and this is going to insert a new document inside of MongoDB, which allows us to have some interesting features. For example, because we would be replacing an existing document, we can introduce some new properties with more complex types, and this is something that I want to explore in one of the other projections that we have. I will go ahead and reuse this part of the query in the other projections that we have. And let's go ahead and fix the ticket created domain event handler. I'm going to inject the event statistics repository, and then I'm going to paste in the code that we had in the previous handler. Now we need to take the select query and execute this using Dapper. And of course, I need to specify event ID as the argument. Then I'll say execute scalar async, and this is going to give me back the value that represents the ticket count. And then on the event statistics instance, I can update the ticket sold to this value and replace the respective document inside of MongoDB. Let's go ahead and update the duplicate check-in attempted domain event handler. And here I can get rid of my database connection factory because it was only doing an update statement, and I can achieve everything with my new approach that's using MongoDB. What we want to do on the event statistics object is introduce a new value in the duplicate check-in tickets collection. So I'm going to say duplicate check-in tickets, add, and then I'm going to pass in the ticket code from my domain event. And this is everything I need inside of this projection. And then the invalid check-in projection is going to be quite similar. I need to inject the event statistics repository, and instead of adding this value to the duplicate check-in tickets collection, I will add it to the invalid check-in tickets collection. And with this, we have re-implemented all of our projections and the one query that we have to use MongoDB under the hood. Unfortunately, these were some breaking changes. So if I go to the get event statistics endpoint, you will see that it's complaining because we have to update the return type to be event statistics. I'll have to specify the namespace as well, but this is all it takes to fix the endpoint. There's also an integration test in the respective integration test project that was checking this collection. We can update this integration test to reference the event statistics type, and this should fix the integration test. And now I can close this down. I can close down our projections because we won't be needing them for the time being. as well as the query, and I want to focus on the event statistics class. In order to make this work with MongoDB, we need to decorate the primary key with an attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and install the MongoDB NuGet package inside of my application project, and let's go ahead and install MongoDB driver and add the latest version. This is more a pragmatic decision that I'm making to make our implementation simpler, and what we want to do is decorate the event ID property with bson ID. And now it's time to implement the iEventStatistics repository inside of our infrastructure project. So let's go ahead and make a few adjustments first. I want to get rid of the event statistics configuration because I won't be needing this type as part of my EF core model anymore. So I'm going to delete this file, and then I will need to update my database context to also remove the reference to this configuration, and let's remove event statistics from the attendance DB context. I will close this down, and then let's add the implementation for our repository in the events folder. So let's call this the event statistics repository. I will make this an internal and sealed class, and we can implement the respective interface. So let's go ahead and introduce the methods that we need here. I'm also going to introduce a helper class, which is going to be a static class that I will call document DB settings. And I just want to define some constants here that are going to make my repository implementation more strongly typed. And the first one I will call database. And if you recall, we created the attendance database at the start of this lesson. And then I want to define the name of my collection, which is event statistics. And the actual name for this collection is event statistics inside of MongoDB. And then let's go ahead and define a constructor inside of our repository implementation. And I need to inject the iMongo client instance. We're going to use the Mongo client to get an instance of an iMongo database. And we can specify the database name from document DB settings and pass in the database value. This is going to give me back a Mongo database instance, and then I can use the Mongo database instance to get an iMongo collection. So let's get the event statistics collection. We need to pass in the respective name for this collection, which is event statistics, and then this value is something that I want to store internally inside of the repository. The type we want to reference is an iMongo collection of event statistics. So let's go ahead and define a private read-only field. The type is going to be iMongo collection of event statistics, and let's call this Mongo collection, but I actually want to rename it to just collection. And this collection is very similar to an EF Core database set. We can use an EF Core database set to write link queries and return values from our database. And in a similar way, we can use the Mongo collection to manipulate the underlying collection in MongoDB. I'm going to start the implementation of the getAsync method, and I need to create a filter definition, and I'll specify event statistics as the generic argument. Then I need to use the builders class, specify event statistics, and I can access the filter definition builder, and I'm looking for an equal filter definition. So I want to just match a specific document inside of this collection. I'm going to match based on the event ID, and I need to provide the concrete value that I'm looking for. And then I can say event statistics and use my Mongo collection to look for a specific document. So I will say find. I can pass in the filter that I just created, and then I can say single async. I can also pass in the cancellation token here, and of course, because this is an async method, I need to await it. And finally, I can return the event statistics instance from this method. And this is how we can implement a simple getById query using the MongoDB driver. The implementation for the insertAsync method is slightly simpler. All we have to do is say await collection insert one async, and then I can pass in my event statistics instance, and I can also pass in the cancellation token. I'm specifically using the insert one async overload that accepts the insert one options argument because the other one is deprecated. And then let's implement the replace async method. It's also going to be asynchronous. I will need my filter definition, and I'm going to reuse the value that I have from my previous query. We can specify the event ID from my event statistics instance, and then let's write the replace query. So I'll say collection replace one async. I need to pass in the filter that we just defined. Then I need to specify my replacement document, and then I'm going to specify the cancellation token. And this takes care of implementing my event statistics repository using MongoDB. Let's go ahead and move the document DB settings into its own file. And then I need to register my event statistics repository with dependency injection. So let's open up the attendance module, and right under the last repository, I'm going to say services add scoped I event statistics repository, and I will specify the event statistics repository as the implementation. And now we should be able to start the application and test out the implementation that's using MongoDB. Our application is running in the background, and the first thing I'm going to do is to update some outbox messages to force them to be processed again. So I'm going to delete the respective outbox message consumer of the event created domain event handler. Let's go ahead and remove this record. And I have all of this information inside of my database from the work we did in the previous chapters and lessons in this course. I'm also going to update the outbox message of the event created domain event, and I will set the processed on property to null, and this should force the outbox processor to pick up this outbox message. And you can see that this is the case because we landed on the breakpoint in the event created domain event handler, which is the same outbox message that I updated. This is going to use my new repository to create an event statistics instance, and then is going to try to insert this record into the respective MongoDB collection. So let's go ahead and execute this. This looks like it completed. So let's press continue. And now if I try to query the event statistics collection, you can see that we have one document inside, which is the document that was created from our first projection. It has the same identifier as our event, and you can see that we copied the other information into the respective document. Currently, the collections for duplicate check-ins and invalid check-ins are empty, but we are going to update this when running a few more use cases. If I try to send a GET request to my API for the event statistics with this particular ID, we should see that we get back a response, and this is our document that we queried directly from MongoDB. Now I will try to check in my attendee with a valid ticket ID. So if I send this request to my API, we should see that we get back a 204 no content response, and this means that we successfully checked in the attendee. This is also going to trigger the attendee checked in domain event in the background, and you can see that this is going on right now. So I'm going to press continue after we have fetched the attendee count from the database, and you can see that this is free. And now I can query the event statistics from the database, update the attendees checked in property, and replace this document inside of MongoDB. Now that we are